This week we've been looking at how we can use Boardmaker 7 to support AAC within our classroom or our setting. On Monday we looked at a range of different resources that we've got available to get you started. And yesterday we learned about the technical skills of how to create some activities in Boardmaker 7. So today we're going to conclude by focusing on how we can use these activities and resources that we've made to support our AAC users. And we will also hear from Lizzie at the A Centre, who's going to talk a little bit about how they use Boardmaker 7. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about how we can support our students using these AAC supports. And I'm going to split it into 3 different steps. So the first step that we're going to look at is finding and creating the right supports. So we know that it's important that we consider the individual needs of our learner and what will work best for them. So this could include choosing the right type of support. So we talked a little bit this week about the different types that we can make. So whether it's, somebody that's using PECs or maybe some switch support, maybe a communication book, a pod, some topic boards, some aided language displays in around the setting. So it's important that we kind of make sure that we're choosing what's right for our learner. But it's also worth remembering that our learners may need more than one type of support depending on their environment. So it might be that a student is using a communication book, but maybe in certain settings they might need to use a different type of support. So maybe they want to use a switch in certain situations, or maybe they're using PECs at certain situations. So it's worth remembering that it's not a one-fits-all type of situation, that maybe we want to consider the range of different supports that we can make and which of those will best support that one learner. So remember that we can use the wide range of tools within Boardmaker 7 to make sure that the content is right. So we did have a look at that yesterday. So if you weren't able to join yesterday, please do. I'll send you a follow-up link that will link into the session. But we looked at things like considering and choosing the right type of image that we may want to use. So this could be using real photos, personal photos, and of course symbols. Now we know that we've got lots and lots of different types of symbols available in Boardmaker 7, so we need to consider how we want to choose and make sure that we've got the right content for our user. And then finally, we can make sure that we're using tools such as the properties panel to make sure the activity looks right for that student to be able to access. So whether it's thinking about the placement of the symbols and the text, the type of font that we're using, the colours maybe that we're using, just to make sure that everything within the content is going to suit the needs of that student. It might even be things like considering the cell size or even the shape of the cell, putting borders on the edges of the cells as well. So we really need to make sure that we've kind of finding and creating the right supports for those users. The second step that I want to consider today is making sure that we are creating the right environment. So now that we've got the supports available and ready for our students, we've made them, we've printed them, we've laminated them, maybe we've put them on an interactive whiteboard or onto our users' devices. We need to make sure that we're providing the right environment for our learners to be able to succeed as communicators. So I'm going to talk about some skills that we can develop as communication partners to ensure that our learners can succeed in their environment. So in this instance, it could be in the classroom, in the clinic, or maybe even at home. So the first I want to talk about is modelling. So anyone that's heard of AAC has probably heard of modelling too. And it's a simple strategy that has been proven to work time and time again. And it's probably, if somebody comes to me and says, what's the one thing that I can do to make sure that my students succeed, Alice? If I had to pick one, modelling would probably be the one that I highlight. It's a really, really important tool, and I think sometimes it can be a bit underrated. So let's talk a little bit about what modelling is. So put in really simple terms, it's using our learners' AAC system when we are communicating with them. So the idea is that we want to expose our learners to that system as much as possible in order for them to be able to succeed and use it successfully. So the kind of analogy that I like to give is that if I'm maybe, let's say I'm trying to teach somebody French, but I only ever speak English to them, the chances of them going on to be able to use French effectively or even to become fluent are going to be fairly slim. So I need to make sure that the input that they're getting matches what I expect on the output. So if I'm hoping that our learner is going to be using the AAC supports to communicate in their environment, then I want to make sure that I'm giving that input and I'm using it with them. So how do we model? How do we do this? So we're going to use our voice and the AAC system at the same time. And our focus is going to be on showing our learner how to use it, as opposed to requiring them to use it. So the idea is that it's all about that as I said earlier, that input and taking it in. And so I'm not so much focusing on getting them to use it, but just them watching me use it and understand how I'm using it in their environment. So we're kind of more moving away from the kind of, can you press the, where is the, show me the, and actually using it with them. So if I'm modeling something on a communication board, it may be pointing to that. If I'm doing something that's interactive, it may be selecting that. If it's a switch, for example, it'll be selecting that switch as well. So it's really me showing how it can be used. So there's different ways in which we can model. So it could be just modeling one word. So if we're thinking about a board or maybe a pod book or a core word book, it might be just showing some simple, picking out some keywords as we're talking to them. So it might be a core word, it might be a quick fire. It might even be modeling how to find the words in the system for them. So actually showing them how to turn those pages or how to scan that communication board so that they can find that word. It could also just be modeling new vocabulary for them. The key thing with modeling is that the more we do it, the better. So we know that if we just focus on modeling just within, I don't know, a one-to-one session, that could work really well for that situation, but the chances of that student then kind of generalizing those skills beyond that half-hour or 45-minute session is going to be kind of slim. Whereas if we do it as much as possible in lots of different situations throughout the day with different people and different contexts, then we know that those opportunities for learning just become much, much wider. So the next tip is on providing that positive communication environment. So this can include things like making sure that we're assuming competence, so that we're, being positive. We're saying things like, I know that you can do this. We're making sure that we're not limiting opportunities for our students. It could be responding to all modes of communication. So it might be that I'm modeling some core words in a communication book, but maybe my student responds with signing or even vocalizing. Now that is just as valid a communication as using their system. And I want to honor that. And I want to encourage them to use all types of communication, because we all use lots of different types of communication. As you can see, I'm using a lot of nonverbal communication here. It might even be simple things like waiting and allowing our students to have processing time. So we know that for some students, they may need a little bit longer to process what they're talking about, maybe even just to process kind of what we're showing them. So making sure that we're aware of that and building in a little bit of waiting time. I like to kind of try and figure that out fairly early when I kind of meet somebody new. And sometimes if I really need to focus on that, I might kind of count to 5 or 10 within my head before I move on to something else. And it could also be as simple as making sure that we provide support when needed. So it could just be that we can see maybe that our student is scanning for a word or looking for something. And maybe it's just as simple as saying, can I help you? Do you want me to show you? and just providing that little bit of support when they need it. And then my final point for creating this kind of right environment is considering how success can look. So we know that success can come in many different forms, and it can sometimes be quite difficult to measure success because, as we know, with AAC, it can often take a lot of time, and it's not as simple as that kind of black and white view of they can use AAC versus they can't use AAC. And so often what can happen is if we don't see kind of big chunks of success quickly, that either the user themselves can kind of become a bit demotivated, or maybe us as communication partners can often start to kind of wonder and worry whether this is working. So progress can often be seen in much smaller chunks, and breaking it down can really help us to kind of stay positive and to encourage our learner. So examples of this could include things like, is this learner showing more independence in using the AAC? So are they actually using this with less prompts? Maybe they're using more vocabulary. So maybe they've actually started, moving away from maybe just the core word page, and they're going into quick fires, or maybe exploring some of their topics. It could be that their interactions are longer. So it might be that over time you've noticed that they're engaging a little bit longer in communication using that AAC. Or it could be simply that they're showing more enjoyment, or they're much more motivated to use AAC now. So it's really worth thinking about breaking down what success can look like into those kind of smaller chunks, and having a bit of a think about how that can look. So Charlotte's just put a couple of links in the chat to some resources that talk a little bit about that. We've got a really great cheat sheet around modelling that just explains a little bit about what modelling is. I use this a lot to hand out to environments where I'm going into support. So whether it's in classrooms, or whether it's parents, carers, anybody that's supporting somebody using AAC. It's a really, really handy bit of information that can kind of break down how modelling works. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the week, we've got a really great course on our Learning Hub around a positive communication environment. So if you'd like to dig into that a little bit more, I'd really encourage you to go and check that out. So finally, my last step is reviewing and updating our AAC supports. So it's making sure that we're making sure that these are as up to date as possible. So it could be as simple as adding some vocabulary, maybe including some more language, but it could also mean adapting a little bit further. So we know that as we grow and as we develop, our needs are going to change slightly. And so we need to make sure that the support that we're providing for our students are constantly meeting their needs and are up to date. So it could be as simple as maybe we've noticed that our student is maybe struggling with a grid size that we're using, and maybe we want to make the buttons a little bit bigger, or the labels a bit bigger. It could be actually that they're transitioning into a new environment, so they've got maybe some different facilities and different people around them. And so we want to make sure that that's constantly up to date with them, so that it's as effective as possible. So we need to consider using some of the tools that we learned about yesterday. So things like the properties panel, and going in and maybe even adding some pages to our communication book or some of our topic pages, adding some vocabulary, and considering things like yesterday we talked a little bit about the user settings and how we can do things like check the type of symbols that we're using, making sure that we've got the appropriate symbols available for our students so that they can keep up to date. So those are my three kind of steps and top tips for today. So it's finding that right support, making sure that we are considering the needs of that student, considering that they may need several types of supports depending on where they're communicating, providing that support and being a good communications partner. So thinking about modelling and providing a positive communication environment, and that kind of piece around looking for success. And then finally, making sure that we're reviewing and updating our AAC supports so that they're as appropriate as possible for our students. So finally today, what I want to show you is a short video from Lizzie at the A Centre. And she's going to talk a little bit about how the A Centre use Boardmaker 7 to create communication books. And I really want to take this moment to thank Lizzie for taking the time to do this for us. It's been really great to hear, and I hope you enjoy this short video.
Hi everyone, my name's Lizzie and I work for a charity called AAC Centre. At AAC Centre we work with people who use augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC. Our mission as a charity is to work with people providing support, advice, technology and training in order to enable people with complex communication needs to fulfil their potential and to express themselves. When we're doing this, we use electronic resources and electronic devices, but we also use a lot of paper-based resources. When we're creating these, we use simple softwares such as Boardmaker. We have 2 robust communication books available. We have Developing and Using a Communication book, which supports you in creation of a personalised, bespoke communication book for an individual, integrating core and fringe vocabulary. And we also have Look to Talk, which follows the same communication book format, but is created in a way that people who use eye pointing to communicate can access it using coded access. For both of these resources, we have templates available within Boardmaker, which allow you to personalise the books to the individual that you're working with to make sure that the language available is really appropriate to them. These templates can be downloaded from our website on acentre.org.uk and can be used by yourselves and by the people that you work with in order to create these resources. There's several features that we find really useful when we're using Boardmaker to create different resources. The first thing that's really useful when we're creating, developing and using a communication book is that it allows you to use different shape buttons. Particularly the folder shape button is really handy to denote a link to a separate page. This makes it clear for the individual using the book to be able to know what different symbols mean. We also make use of the ability to change the colour of the pages, as this denotes different topics within a communication book. And we use the ability to change the border of a cell to create resources for people who use auditory scanning and visual scanning, as you can separate things by columns or rows to enable people to see more clearly the difference between them. We also make use of the PCS high contrast symbols, and these are really useful when creating resources for individuals who may have a visual impairment. The ability to save a template within Boardmaker is really useful, as it enables you to go back to the same format again and again to create bespoke books and bespoke pages for individuals that you work with, making sure that, for example, that the core is consistent and that the number of symbols on a fringe page is consistent, and that things tend to follow the same sort of layout. This allows people to learn through motor planning as well as through learning what the language means. You can find out more about developing and using a communication book and Look to Talk through our website. They're both available to purchase in the shop, and you can find out more through AAC Centre Learning, where we'll be running courses on each of these packages. These courses will give you more information about when you could use the book, who you could use it for, and how you can start implementing it with people you work with. We also have a range of free communication charts that have been created in Boardmaker that are available to download from our website. These are available for a range of grid sizes and also for a range of access methods, including auditory scanning and eye pointing.
There you go. So thanks again for Lizzie for sharing that for us.
Hi everyone.
Oops.
Hi everyone.
Go through that. I hope you found that useful. I would highly recommend going to check out the AAC Centre's website. I think Jack just put in some links in there for you guys to be able to have a look. But they've got some really great resources on there, and as Lizzie said, they've created some fantastic stuff. So if you'd like to get a little bit more information about that, please do go and check that out. So before we finish for today, just a little reminder that if anybody would like some more information about some other stuff that we've talked about this week, please do get in touch with us. It could be that you want us to come and deliver some personalised training for your setting. And we're also offering some free eye gaze clinics. So for those people that would like to trial some eye gaze devices with their students, we will come along to your setting and give you a good opportunity to trial it with a range of different students.